For most of human history, money wasn't shining metal, printed paper, or digital numbers flickering across a screen. It was stranger, far stranger, and far more revealing about the people who used it. Because long before banks, long before coins stamped with kings, and long before accountants tried to measure the world, one civilization discovered value in a place no merchant today would dare to look, inside the pod of a tropical tree.
Oh.
A pod that carried a bitter seed. A seed that would one day become chocolate. But to the Maya, cacao wasn't sweet, it wasn't a treat, it wasn't dessert, it was identity, it was ceremony. It was social power woven into everyday life. And eventually, it evolved into something even more extraordinary. A currency, a living, growing, harvestable form of money that fueled markets, funded rulers, and shaped the political destiny of entire regions. This wasn't just money made from a plant, it was money born from belief. The belief that value didn't need to be mined, forged, or minted. It could be cultivated, counted, traded, consumed. If you think modern finance pushes boundaries, the Maya were already challenging what money could be over 1,000 years ago. Welcome to our channel, where history, power, and human ingenuity collide. And nothing about the past is ever as simple as it seems. To understand how cacao became currency, you first have to understand the world that created it. To understand the economic world the Maya built, you first have to clear away all the distortions, the movie myths, the simplified classroom charts, the half-remembered timelines. The real Maya weren't a scattered people in remote jungles. They were the architects of one of the most advanced civilizations in the ancient world, stretching across what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Their cities didn't merely appear, they rose over centuries, reaching dazzling heights during the Classic period, roughly 250 to 900 CE. And these weren't just ceremonial complexes surrounded by huts. They were living, breathing metropolises. Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, Copond, dot each home to tens of thousands, structured around plazas, palaces, reservoirs, causeways, and towering pyramids that still challenge the imagination today. Behind those stone monuments was a society that understood engineering, astronomy, mathematics, hydrology, and logistics. Society that organized agriculture on a scale large enough to support dense urban populations. A society that built complex political hierarchies, managed long-distance trade, and executed economic policies without any of the technologies people today assume are necessary. No wheels for transport, no horses or oxen, no metal carts, yet their economy still functioned with a level of efficiency that rivaled the Mediterranean world. They solved their challenges through human ingenuity instead. Terraced hillsides captured rainfall, irrigation canals carried water to fields, elevated chinampa-type plots and forest gardens created resilient food systems. Farmers cultivated maize, beans, squash, chili, cotton, cacao, and more. Meanwhile, porters carried goods between cities, canoes glided down rivers, and merchant guilds linked regions that differed in altitude, climate, and available resources. But the backbone of this economic machine was something far more fundamental: marketplaces. Maya. Markets weren't small, occasional gatherings. They were permanent centers of exchange, regulated by officials, supervised by tax collectors, and monitored to prevent dishonest dealings. These marketplaces pulsed with activity. Every day, farmers unloaded baskets of fresh produce. Artisans displayed obsidian blades, shell jewelry, pottery, tools, and textiles. Traders negotiated for salt, jade, pigments, pelts, medicinal plants, and exotic feathers. Prices rose and fell based on supply, demand, and availability, just as they do today. And all of this required something most ancient civilizations eventually developed: a standardized medium of exchange. A currency. A system that didn't depend on the awkwardness of barter. But the Maya didn't begin with metal coins. They began with something else, something that already carried symbolic weight across. Mesoamerica, cacao. Cacao wasn't consumed casually. In the Maya world, it was sacred, elite, and deeply embedded in myth. It represented fertility, life force, and divine order. It appeared in the Popolvuh. It was part of royal rituals, diplomatic meetings, and marriage negotiations. Its value wasn't invented by decree. It existed culturally long before it became economic. That's the first rule of money. People must believe it means something. But the Maya didn't stop at symbolic value. They standardized cacao. They counted beans. They stored them in measured bundles. They recorded cacao payments in tribute lists, murals, codices, and administrative texts. Workers were paid in cacao. Penalties were assessed in cacao. Food, clothing, tools, all could be purchased with cacao. In other words, cacao became currency. And because the Maya were meticulous record keepers, we know the actual prices of goods. A rabbit cost about 10 beans. A turkey hen closer to 100. A cotton mantle anywhere from 20 to 25. A good obsidian tool? 3 to 5 beans. These numbers weren't invented by scribes centuries later. They're supported by archaeological evidence. Colonial accounts of pre-conquest, practice, and the consistency of marketplace records.
Ouch.
This wasn't barter. This was a functioning monetary economy. Cacao was divisible, portable, countable, and widely accepted, the very traits that define money. But cacao wasn't just a convenience. It shaped Maya political structures, economic networks, and even military campaigns. Because when your currency grows on trees, literal trees, your prosperity becomes tied to weather patterns, harvest cycles, and ecological stability. A drought didn't just hurt farmers. It tightened the money supply. A blight didn't just damage crops. It caused inflation. Cacao wasn't just a food, it was a financial indicator. The Maya were running a commodity-backed monetary system centuries before economists invented the term. And like any resource-based currency, from gold to silver to oil, it created both stability and vulnerability. To understand the full sophistication of the Maya economy, you have to look beyond cacao itself and into the layered monetary structure that surrounded it. Because cacao wasn't alone. It existed inside a hierarchy of value, a three-tiered financial ecosystem that reveals just how complex Maya commerce really was. Start at the base, cacao beans. These were the coins of everyday life, the currency of the marketplace. Light enough to carry, small enough to divide, and valuable enough to make even minor purchases efficient. But cacao had limits. You wouldn't haul sacks of beans across long distances to pay for a major diplomatic gift.
Act for that.
The Maya used Tier 2, cotton mantles, and woven textiles. These weren't ordinary cloth. They were standardized, recognized across regions, and difficult to produce. That difficulty created stable value. They functioned like higher denomination notes, used for significant purchases or tribute between cities. Then came Tier 3, luxury goods. Jade beads, carved shells, obsidian blades of exceptional quality, richly painted ceramics, quetzal feathers, and other prestige items. These weren't tea currency in the everyday sense. You didn't tea buy a meal with a quetzal feather? But they served as long-term stores of wealth, elite assets, and political capital. A ruler might accumulate them to demonstrate power. A merchant might use them to establish status. They were the Maya equivalent of gold reserves. Together, these tiers created a flexible system. A farmer buying food used cacao. Trader moving goods between cities used textiles. King negotiating alliances offered jade or ceremonial objects. It was fully integrated and fully intentional. But a layered monetary system also creates layered vulnerabilities. Take counterfeiting. Yes, the Maya faced that too. Spanish chroniclers recorded a problem that feels surprisingly modern: fake money. People hollowed out cacao beans, filled them with dirt or ash, and resealed them with skillful precision. Imagine discovering your savings were nothing but shells filled with dust. This forced markets to develop quality control methods, official inspectors, sorting protocols, and rules to verify genuine beans. Long before modern governments issued anti-counterfeiting warnings, the Maya were dealing with the same issue on their market floors. Inflation also played a role. Because cacao trees only grew in specific lowland regions, the money supply wasn't evenly distributed. City-states with access to cacao-rich zones effectively controlled the currency production. If harvests flourished, beans flooded the markets and prices dropped. If droughts struck, beans became scarce and prices rose sharply. Economists today would call this a commodity supply shock. The Maya simply lived through it. But cacao had another dimension: geopolitics. Control of cacao growing zones wasn't merely an agricultural concern, it was a strategic priority. City-states fought over orchards the way empires centuries later would battle over gold mines, oil fields, and strategic minerals. With cacao as currency, war became economic policy. Conquering a region meant gaining access to revenue. Losing a region meant losing liquidity. Inside this volatile system operated the puhuns, long-distance merchants who bridged regions, cultures, and political spheres. These traveling traders understood the risk of moving precious goods across forests, mountains, and rivers. They were more than transporters, were diplomats, negotiators, and sometimes spies. They carried information as carefully as they carried cacao. Their survival depended on relationships, local alliances, and knowledge of safe routes. In many ways, they were the backbone of Maya globalization, a proto-network of supply chains that kept distant cities economically interdependent. Replace their loads with shipping containers and their routes with modern highways, and you recognize the familiar shape of international trade. And all of this occurred within a system where the main currency could rot. Cacao beans could mold, dry out, crack, or attract insects. Stored improperly, they spoiled, meaning value literally decayed. But this perishability wasn't just a flaw. It created movement. It discouraged hoarding and encouraged circulation. Wealth didn't stagnate, it flowed. Perishable currency promoted economic dynamism, something economists today sometimes struggle to achieve artificially. Even as the classic Maya world fragmented politically in later centuries due to droughts, warfare, and shifting alliances, cacao endured. It transitioned seamlessly into the post-classic period. The Aztecs later adopted it, taxed it, stored it in state-controlled warehouses, and even regulated its distribution. Cacao didn't vanish. Its values survived empires, because at its core, cacao wasn't just a bean. It was an agreement, a shared belief in value. When you view the Maya monetary system through a modern lens, something remarkable appears. Their economy becomes a mirror, not a relic. A reflection of the forces that still shape money today. Because the Maya understood something that remains true whether you're dealing with cacao, paper bills, gold, or digital tokens. Money is trust turned into an object. Money starts as belief. The Maya believed cacao mattered. They believed a bundle of beans represented value that would still hold tomorrow. They built institutions, markets, inspectors, merchants, tribute systems to enforce that belief. And once people accept value collectively, an economy can grow far beyond the limits of barter. Money becomes a language everyone speaks, regardless of what they produce. But belief is fragile. That was true for the Maya, and it's true now. When your currency depends on a resource you can't fully control, you live with constant vulnerability. The Maya tied their money supply to a plant, one sensitive to drought, frost, soil depletion, and disease. If the trees suffered, the economy contracted. If the climate shifted, prices shifted. Their inflation wasn't theoretical, it was agricultural. A dry season could trigger a liquidity crisis. Its modern inflation works differently, but the root concept is the same. When supply tightens, value shifts. Counterfeiting? The Maya faced it with hollow beans. We face it with digital fraud, doctored transactions, and complex manipulations. Different tools, same human impulse. Geopolitics? Maya kings fought over cacao orchards. Modern nations negotiate, compete, and sometimes go to war over oil. Natural gas, lithium, cobalt, and strategic ports. Change the resource, and the pattern repeats. Ancient city-states wanted the land that produced the currency. Modern powers want the land that fuels their industries. Elite concentration of wealth. The Maya experienced that too. Rulers controlled tribute flows. Nobles managed long-distance trade. Elites stored prestige goods. Inequality wasn't accidental, it was built into the system itself. The same is true today, when access to capital, credit, and financial tools determines who accumulates wealth. Environmental risk. Maya cities struggled when rainfall patterns changed. Their reservoirs ran dry, crops failed, and trade routes shifted. Today we struggle when supply chains break, climate events disrupt production, or global networks falter. Remove the temples and the lush forests, and the Maya economy looks strikingly familiar. And here lies the deepest lesson in their story. Value isn't inherent. It's constructed. It requires institutions, stability, confidence, and shared agreement. When that agreement breaks, when trust erodes, even the strongest currencies collapse. The Maya understood this intuitively. Their economy worked not because cacao beans were magical, but because people collectively decided they mattered. They enforced quality. They standardized bundles. They trusted merchants. They monitored markets. They believed in their system until circumstances changed enough to shake that belief. When environmental pressure mounted, when warfare intensified, when trade routes fractured, confidence declined. And when confidence declines, economies unravel from the inside out. That's not a Maya problem. That's a human pattern. Every currency, ancient or modern, is only as strong as the society behind it. The Maya turned cacao into money because they had social cohesion, administrative oversight, and economic necessity. Their system flourished for centuries because trust circulated as reliably as the beans themselves. When trust broke, the system faltered. And that is the real lesson hidden in the history of cacao currency. Money is fragile, not because of what it's made of, but because of what it represents, a collective promise about the future. The civilizations that endure are the ones that understand that fragility, maintain confidence, adapt to change, and treat value not as a fixed fact but as a living agreement. The Maya show us that money doesn't begin with metal or paper or digital code. It begins with belief, and belief must be protected. Because once people stop agreeing on value, even the most powerful economies can crumble, whether they rebuilt on cacao beans or global markets. If the story of a civilization turning a fragile bean into an economic engine makes you rethink how our own world works, don't stop here. There's more buried beneath the timelines and ruins, patterns that shape every crisis, every currency, every rise and fall. You want to see the hidden mechanics behind history's biggest turning points? Hit subscribe. The past isn't gone, it's speaking. And I'll show you exactly how to listen.